So we're back. We're doing Let's Read Throne of Glass. Um, Last we left off, Celaena had really started to get into the competition. She's not the kind of girl to lose at anything, so she starts getting up before dawn to train. Um, she's really thrown herself into it. Um, a lot of the other contestants are really solitary people, but with some of the events that are unfolding and the fact that the armsmaster has a favorite pet who really likes to bully people, they do click up a little bit more. And in particular, Celaena starts to be friends with a poisoner and a thief. She gives them some tips, him some tips on knife throwing, and they kind of address the big elephant in the room of the day, which is that one of the champions was murdered. She doesn't have a whole lot of information. She just knows that Cal didn't show up, and he's not like he's a very routine sort of guy. So they're all in this environment of nobility and upper class and people of the court, and right in the midst of it all, there's this murder that they don't really say exactly what happened, and they won't let them in on what's going on. But it sounds like it was grisly, and they kind of can't figure out, how is this happening here? It's obviously happening to them, and not to the nobles. Is this a political thing? Like, what's going on here? But nobody really has very much information, or if they do, they're not sharing. So eventually, Kale does show up to check in on Celaena, as always, and they have their usual kind of back and forth, which is a little bit snarky and sarcastic. Um, she's kind of got her attitude, and he kind of, has his. But they do wind up exchanging stories about their childhoods. So there is a little bit of character development, some softening up there, where he kind of tells her everything that he went through to get to where he is and what he had to give up. And she turns around, and as always, Celaena's past kind of takes the taco there. And she lets him know what she went through to get to where she is, or even more than that, like what drove her to it. So you leave them with this very sympathetic note for what she's gone through and who she is as a result, which you're kind of going to need for the kind of character that she is, to really understand what would drive somebody like that. A couple of, questions. They had all this magic, just this incredible amount of power. And it made me think about technology. So, for instance, gunpowder was invented in ancient China, and I really want to say it's in the 1500s. I should have fact checked that. But it didn't really make its way into even cannons and that until much later, well over 100 years later. And the question is how do you have this power and not develop it? They're still using daggers and bows and all that sort of medieval weaponry and so on. If you have this limitless sculpting ability, I mean, they made a castle of glass. Don't you think it would have affected, how they fight and, things like that, how they make things, given them kind of this edge? So that was something I was curious about, is how does something like that stick around? And my first thought was gunpowder in ancient China stuck around for quite a long time without being weaponized. The other question that I had that was kind of modern day relevant was, can you really keep details about something like a murder secret? They There's social media today, and people have gotten in trouble for taking pictures at crime scenes, EMTs and policemen and whatnot, and posting it on their Facebook. There's huge privacy laws and things like that now to protect the victim's family, to protect the investigation. But word certainly does get out, and I gotta wonder, this is pre like forensic team cleanup, all in-house, etc., where they had servants clean up and stuff like that. So I gotta wonder, would word really have stayed under wraps quite like that, or maybe the champions just aren't connected. So what's going on there? A couple of pet peeves. I really feel like Celaena should be more focused on her cover story, as it gives her an edge. And she's going back to the salt mines if she doesn't win this competition. So talk about motivating factors. I really just feel like survival instincts would kick in at some point and override her attitude, as kind of endearing and real as that attitude is. We live in a very bubble wrap society, so I gotta wonder about that. Also, on the subject of survival instincts, Kale is like getting really obsessive with Celaena, given that his boss is a peasant gutting tyrant. I mean, granted, he doesn't really seem to show that side of himself too much to Kale and to even, like a little bit to the prince, but not to that degree. But if I knew that my boss were out slaughtering nations, I might worry a little bit more about, hey, he doesn't like this assassin that I'm training. Maybe I should act slightly differently. So those are just a couple of little character pet peeves that popped up. Something to watch for in writing. This is obviously YA, so it is supposed to be that you fall in love with the characters. More for new adult or, adult books. You really want to pay attention to little nitpicky details in your characters where they're these human beings that if you psych profiled them, it was like everything would check out. So, a couple of thoughts. I'm Tatiana Anjindra. Thank you for joining me. You can find me online at Tatiana Anjindra on youtube.com or badfantasyrx.blogspot.com. Drop me a like or subscribe, and as always, much love. Enjoy the book.